Hello, my name is John Blayhut, and today I am going to share the experience of writing a short story based on a novel that me and my friend Joseph Pugh wrote called The Trials of Jack Kemper. Um, so this story, as with all the short stories, well, most of the short stories that we're writing, um, comes from our novel, and they're kind of alluded to in in the novel, but they're not included in it. They're sort of like background for the characters and stories that they mention. So if you go out to Amazon.com and you look up the book or click the link below, you can click on the title here or the book cover, and it'll actually bring up the first chapter and a little bit of the second chapter um, as a free read, free trial to see if you actually like it. So let's go to chapter. Here you go. So um, here's the area that alludes to or mentions the story that I'm about to write. So basically, Melinda had just seduced Jack, and they had just had sex, and let's see, what do we need to mention? Duct tape plays a role in the story. Jack smelled like some stinky recycled water. His socks did. So I think that covers everything you need to know um, for this part, anyway. Melinda paraded across the room. She had a small apartment. It might be called a studio apartment if not for being so small. It was just big enough for a bed, bedside table, chair, a kitchen bathroom type area with a sink, waste receptacle, and a few storage cubbies. She reached into a cubby and pulled out a bottle and two glasses. She turned around with a smile. This is the real deal, aged Tennessee whiskey. She began to walk back towards Jack, but suddenly came to a stop. Damn this duct tape. She reached out and pulled a piece off her foot. She flicked it to the side and continued to bed. Jack sat up as Melinda handed him a glass. It's actually whiskey? Melinda winked. I won't tell you what I had to do to get it. She sat down on the edge of the bed, opened a bottle, and poured a little into each glass. Jack sloshed his drink around. He raised his glass to her with a nod. Cheers, gorgeous. Jack snapped awake. The fog of alcohol distorted his vision as he looked around. The room was slow to come into focus, but it was as he remembered. Melinda was draped over him like a blanket, and that smell. Fuck that smell, he whispered to himself. I'm going to have to burn those damn socks. Jack noticed the half-full bottle of whiskey resting on the bedside table and began to extricate himself. He tried to gently move Melinda to the side, but she started to stir. He sat up on the edge of the bed and reached for the bottle. Pour me one too, honey, she groggily said. Jack twisted off the cap and topped off the two glasses from the previous night. He turned to hand Melinda her glass and said, Well, you can't say I never made you breakfast for... Well, you can't say I never made you breakfast in bed. Always the romantic, Jack, she smiled as she took a drink. Jack gulped his down. Ah, damn, this might be the best breakfast I've ever had. So how do you manage to get a hold of real whiskey, he had to ask. A woman has her ways, Jack, she said slyly. And you have ways most women don't. He felt he should give credit where due. She started to explain. Well, Jim had been sitting on this bottle for a while. He actually tried to lure me in with it a few years back. Jack reasoned. Makes sense. It's not like anyone up here has the credits to make it worth his while. Melinda responded quite frankly. Well, blowjobs are worth more than money to a lot of guys. Suddenly, the entire room shook violently. The bottle of whiskey was knocked to the floor. They looked at each other, very concerned, not for the whiskey. So that is the setup for this story. Basically, um, we're just going to tell the story of how she acquired the whiskey for Jack, and she wanted to give him a treat. So the title of the story will be Tennessee's Finest because that's Jack Daniels. And this is the second story that I'm doing. You can find the other one on our YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and get started here. So Melinda's unofficial role, kind of what she does to entertain herself and acquire things for herself, is a facilitator. Facilitator is a slang term that I made up, and basically she uses her womanly ways to get things done, either for herself or for other people at a price. If you've ever seen Soylent Green with Charlton Heston, there were women that came with the apartments, and they were called furniture because it was a very enlightened movie. No, it wasn't. Basically, they were furniture. They were like it was like a furnished apartment, and as rich men would move into an apartment, they were just part of it. So Melinda is a facilitator, and basically she uses sex to get things done. So let's talk about that. So, if when you read the book, you'll learn that the population of the colony has been in decline for years. So, not every role gets refilled whenever people die, and it just so happened that the people that she reported to died. Pretty much leaving her free to do what she wants, which is a good gig if you can get it. And she wants sex. So I also want to make it clear that Jack knows what Melinda does for a living, and it doesn't bother him. It actually kind of, he finds it exciting. It kind of turns him on. So let's add something about that. I also want to point out that she's younger than Jack and the other characters in the book by a good decade, and reinforced the fact that, as dreadful as Bravo Colony has become over the last 2 decades, that it's far better than what's going on down on Earth, which is disease, starvation, warlords, slavers, cannibals, pirates, all sorts of fun stuff. But we'll get to that later, because it is coming. So Alright, so now we can get to Jim, maybe. So, even though Jim is one of Jack's friends, he still wants to nail Melinda, because, everybody wants to nail Melinda. And Jack doesn't care. So why not? And Melinda doesn't care. Let's see. So let's just reiterate that nothing shady was going on between Jim and Melinda that would offend anyone. I want people to like Joe and Melinda. They're different, but they're good people. Slutty but good. All right. So I started out writing scripts. Me and Joe wrote a web series that we never managed to get made, and we've written some other like feature-length scripts. So I tend to write a lot of dialogue, just because, you know, when you're writing for video, you tend to tell a lot of the story through dialogue. So I tend to get do too much of it, but I'm getting better at it. So, funny story. I was at Gen Con, I don't know, in Indianapolis. No, actually, this was this one's in Indianapolis. I must have been 2006. and Carrie Byron from the Mythbusters were there, and she was signing autographs. And I know a lot of guys have a thing for her when she was on Mythbusters because she was geeky and cute. But I'll be honest, when I saw her in person, um, she's the first woman I ever thought was like breathtaking. Um, she almost shined across the room. It was crazy how attractive she was, um, and I didn't really think she was, too hot on the show. But seeing her in person was a different story. So that's kind of the feeling I get when, or I'm trying to convey when people see Melinda, is that um, she's already very beautiful, and so here, she's actually trying to turn on the charm and get the bottle from Jim. So I just want to make it evident that involuntarily something happens where her beauty is just enhanced through a physiological response. So let's see here. So this is where Melinda's true strength is, and the art of triggering people and determining exactly what they want for what she wants. So let's have her make him an offer that she knows he will turn down and almost get offended by, and prompt him to come back with exactly what he's looking for. Well, almost exactly what he's looking for. So because she knows he doesn't want money. He doesn't want any amount of money. Jim, you dog. So Jim is about 20 years older than Melinda. He's in his 50s. She's like 33. Are you lonely, Jim? I wish there was a way just to keep it centered. There probably is, and I just don't know. Couldn't go fast enough. So I'm not going to get into the actual act of what happened. It's actually mentioned in the story, as you saw in the novel. So let's see. Ooh. All right. I think that tells the story. Let's give it a read. Alright, so Melinda walked into the Hog and Dog wearing a very tight pair of black leggings and an even tighter dark green top. Every man and a few women in the place paused to look. It was unusual for a woman among their ranks to be dressed in such a stylishly provocative manner. She liked to turn heads. She enjoyed the attention. As a facilitator for the colony, she often found herself in the position to acquire items that most people couldn't. It didn't hurt if she could get a few items tossed in for herself, and she usually did. There were no rules for this sort of role. The black leggings and dark green top were her latest toss-ins. Facilitator wasn't even an official role. Her official title was something or another administrator. She couldn't even remember it anymore. It's not like she reported to anyone. There was a period in time several years ago when she did, however that person died and nobody ever bothered to fill that role. To fill the role. As long as the credits kept coming to her account, Melinda didn't worry about it. Melinda, rather than sitting around all day and doing nothing, blazed her own unique trail. She had developed quite a reputation among the elite of the colony over the years, a reputation that had grown to a point that if one of the council members wanted something that was difficult to obtain, they would call in Melinda. None of them ever knew exactly how she managed to make the deal, but her success rate was quite high. Jack knew how she did it. There wasn't a secret kept between the two. It had gotten to the point where the tale of the deal was more like foreplay. Melinda was a young woman all of 19 years old when she was selected for a position on Bravo Colony. The colony seemed like a grand adventure, and more importantly, it was far above the chaos that was consuming the planet. It turned out that life on the colony was actually quite boring, however, it was still better than being down below. Jim was at his place behind the bar. It was the only place he truly felt comfortable. He was wiping down the counter when he noticed Melinda out of the corner of his eye. How could he not? She immediately lit up the room. Everyone knew that Jack and Melinda were an item. They also knew that there were no strings there. They couldn't help but notice the two got around. Jim had been trying to get Melinda around him for quite a while, but his attempts up to this point had been unsuccessful. Jim had the drink made and on the counter, gin on the rocks, as Melinda took her seat on the stool. "Howdy, gorgeous," he said. Melinda smiled at Jim as she picked up her glass. "Hi, Jim. How's business today?" "Pretty steady so far," he replied. "Glad to hear it." Jim winked. "That's a nice outfit you have on. It draws the eyes." "It's better. That's why I have it." Jim reached under the bar and pulled out a dusty old bottle of Jack Daniels whiskey and set it on the counter. "You know, I'm still sitting on this bottle. It has your name on it." Melinda picked it up, giggled, and replied, "Well, it has Jack's name on it." Jim feigned frustration. "Woman, you know what I mean," as he smiled at her. Melinda was a very attractive woman, but when she was doing business and her intent was to charm, her beauty became almost radiant. There was a physiological response. Her cheeks would flush, her tone would soften, and her eyes would bat. She was just trying to be charming, but her body would seduce involuntarily. "So what's it going to take, handsome?" she asked. Jim had worked the bar for decades. He had seen it all, the pickups, the come-ons. Even with his years of experience, Melinda's sultry charm almost left him speechless. "I'll let you make the offer," Jim replied. "How does 500 credits sound?" she asked. Jim was almost offended. "Credits? Oh, honey, if I wanted credits for that bottle, it would have been sold long ago." "I figured as much," she replied. Jim winked at her again. "I was hoping for something a little more personal." "Are you lonely, Jim?" "I wouldn't say lonely, not when I have the fine company of the likes of you, but I have felt a few needs creep up lately." Melinda stood up from her bar stool, or her stool. She flashed a smile at Jem and ran her hands over her body as she feigned straightening out her outfit. She nodded her head towards the kitchen door and began to walk that way. Jem was shocked. This wasn't the first time these two had this conversation. This wasn't usually the end result. He certainly wasn't expecting it. But even Jem, the consummate professional, found this a compelling reason to leave his bar unattended. He grabbed a bottle off the counter and followed her through the door to the kitchen. Several minutes passed. A few patrons had gathered at the counter, waiting for Jem to return and fill their drinks. As the minutes passed by, they began to worry. "This isn't like Jem," one man said. "I've never seen him gone longer than a few minutes," another man said. Should we call someone?" the other man asked. A woman standing at the counter chuckled. "Guys, I saw him go into the kitchen with Melinda. Give him a few minutes. Trust me, he won't be long." They responded with a collective, "Oh." A minute later, Melinda walked through the kitchen door. She was carrying a bottle of Tennessee's Finest as she walked through the pub with a big smile on her face. A few seconds later, Jem returned to the counter with an even bigger smile on his face. He quite joyfully asked, "What can I get you, gents?" All right. That works for me. So, the novel, The Trials of Jack Kemper, Liberty Island Episode 1, is available on Amazon for the Kindle. It is free with Kindle Unlimited. It is free to borrow if you have Amazon Prime and a Kindle. And it is $4.99 if you don't have either of those. And again, the first chapter is free by clicking the book cover on Amazon. You can read it and see if you like it. I'd appreciate it if you bought it, and I'd appreciate it even more if you left a review telling me how wonderful it is. Or you can tell me I suck. Whatever. Up to you. So, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the process. See you next week.